Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jim Walter, and I am president of Legacy Tree Foundation. I'm so glad you joined us this morning. We're excited to be able to share a couple of ideas with you about our charitable legacy plans that we offer through Legacy Tree Foundation. Today, we're going to specifically be talking about how you could fund those legacy plans using real estate. And so we're very excited to be able to share those ideas with you this morning. I'll touch on a few details about our organization at the end. So I'll just give you a couple of highlights here at the beginning. That obviously the name of the organization is Legacy Tree Foundation, as I've already mentioned. We're a Christian 501c3 public charity. Our mission is to provide spiritual, physical, and humanitarian aid to those in need. So that's what we do as a charity. You can go to our website. You can see it there. It gives some information about us. There's a nice video on there about some of the charities that we support, some of the organizations and what we do as a charity. It's actually a long video right now, but you can go and look at that in segments. Or come to one of our concepts webinars. We give a little more information about Legacy Tree Foundation there. But for now, I just want to give you a brief monologue here before we jump in. But I need to point out that we're going to be discussing how you can help your clients benefit from charitable planning. The exciting part for us is that we're going to be talking about how your clients can get something in return when they do charitable planning. So it's always, I feel, important to point out that it's not just about giving assets away. It's also about your clients getting something in return when they do this type of planning, so they can give and they can receive something back from the type of charitable plans that we'll talk about. And I'd like to clarify this as to why we're unique as a charity here at Legacy Tree Foundation, because we're a little different in that instead of working through a donor base like most charities do, we work with financial professionals just like you, and then we show you how you can help your clientele take advantage of some of these simple planning tools that are outlined in the IRS code that pretty much anybody could benefit from. We found that a lot of people, both advisors and clients, were not necessarily aware that there are some planning tools in the IRS code that allow people to not only give to charities, but they can also receive income and several tax benefits as well. So there's a lot of planning that can be involved with the tax and income planning that's available. It's also important for me to point out at the outset that you don't have to have only high net worth clients to do this type of planning, because nearly anybody can benefit from charitable planning, or specifically this type of planning. So don't be thinking, oh, well, I don't have a lot of high net worth clients, so this might not work for me, because to me, anybody that itemizes their taxes can benefit from a tax deduction. I've said this before, but people that pay $5,000 in taxes, they want to save money on those taxes just as much as somebody that's making $50,000 in taxes. So that's real important on how the tax benefits affect certain people. And you know your clientele, and you know which ones would like to benefit by reducing their taxes. So in general, these are strategies that help your clients reposition existing assets like securities, real estate, annuities in exchange for the income tax savings, the capital gain tax savings, there's estate tax savings, all while they're able to secure a tax advantage income that is insured. And then, of course, they can do all of this while helping people in need around the world through the charitable component of these types of transactions. And of course, today, regarding the assets in this webinar, we'll be specifically discussing our unique real estate transfer type of a program, how people can transfer a real estate type of asset to Legacy Tree Foundation in exchange for the tax and income benefits. But the last thing then I want to point out here is that we're finding that advisors are increasingly wanting to work with us here at Legacy Tree Foundation because of three things. One, we compensate you as the advisor. Secondly, because of the fact that we insure the future income obligations to your client, that gives a lot of peace of mind to people. And then thirdly, because we also allow your client to participate in the charitable component. In other words, we let the client make a recommendation to the charities they would like to see benefit from their transaction. So we also make that available. So it gives you some flexibility and control for the client when they're doing these types of transactions. Let me knock out this slide at the front just to make sure we get the disclaimers out of the way here. As I mentioned, number two, there we're a 501c3, so we're not an insurance company, we're not a broker-dealer, we're not a financial institution. Don't get us confused with that. This is an educational seminar. Fourth point there is that our programs are charitable plan giving transactions as outlined in the IRS code. They're not considered investments. These are charitable plans, so it's key that you have that. You shouldn't present them as investments to your clients. It's educational information. We're not giving tax, legal, financial advice. Obviously, you got to get those people involved. You may be those people, and so just make sure all those bases are covered. We don't give securities advice. We're not a securities organization or anything there. And then we may or may not be available in every state. We are in most states, though. I think we're in about 48 of the states, so we're pretty good. Got pretty much everything covered there. And we don't send out our invitations to the states we're not in anyway, so you're probably not from one of those. So we're good, but we can check that when we start communicating with you about a case that you may be working on. So let's get started. I like to get started here. Kind of points out stuff you already know. I think real estate's an excellent asset transfer program for us. But the thing that we found out is many advisors, real estate professionals, tend to leave this asset on the table when they're working with their clients, because we find that they're just simply not aware of the options that they have to help their clients that own real estate. And I thought it might be helpful to just run through a list of the types of property that are most often transferred and get you thinking of which of your clients might have one or more of these types of real property for this discussion today. Raw undeveloped land is a popular one because a lot of people invested in land that they wanted to hold, maybe to build a house on. Maybe they just have it because they wanted to control it. Well, now they're at a place where maybe it's grown in value and they want to liquidate, but there's issues with it, or capital gains or whatever. Farms and ranches are always good. People want to maybe reduce the size of their real estate holdings on farms and ranches. Rental properties are always popular. Matter of fact, they might even be the most popular on the list here. Apartment buildings kind of fall in that same category. Second homes, a lot of people buy second homes maybe when they're in their 60s, and then they get to be their 75s or 80s, and they realize now that maybe the kids aren't as interested, and so they want to liquidate that. So that's a good asset to use. Commercial and industrial property, that can be valuable too, depending on how it's held. So those are all the types of real property, real estate that we typically see happening for these types of cases that we do. I'm sure you have a pretty good idea of the overall value in real estate, so I think we'd probably agree on most of these points here at the outset. But it seems like right now in many parts of the country, real estate is like the hot item. So it's obviously a proven investment for a lot of folks. For a lot of people, it's the most valuable in their estate is the real estate that they're holding, in addition to the other investments. Keep in mind, I will point out that we don't do cases very often where it's their primary residence. It usually is other property outside of their residence, obviously because they have to live somewhere. So that usually isn't what they use these types of transactions for. Third point there, you'd probably agree with me, but when I think of wealthy people, it seems like a lot of those currently own or they have owned real estate to become wealthy people. So that's not unusual. It's kind of one of those assets that can build wealth in an up or down market, because I know a lot of the wealthy families today are wealthy because of real estate. And once again, even though there was some volatility in real estate a few years ago, it typically comes around to being a very consistent asset to have and to grow wealth from. Matter of fact, thinking back now, probably all of us on this webinar today probably are all thinking, boy, I wish I'd have bought some more real estate a few years ago when it, was down, and now it's back up in value. So we all know what that's like. And then the last point there is, and we touched on a little bit earlier, but more than likely, many of your clients, if not most of them, probably own some kind of real estate in some fashion or other. And that's why we wanted to have this conversation with you today. But the real question comes down to, do you feel equipped to help them with this valuable asset in other ways than just being able to help them sell it? And then you can help them plan with the proceeds. That's what we want to get involved in, is get to that point before they liquidate the property. What we really want to do is make you aware of the type of real estate and the type of owner to look for, so that you can have availability to this type of strategy in your back pocket as a helpful option for your clients, obviously the clients who own real estate. And that's what we want to be able to help you with today. So we've talked a little bit about the upside and how real estate can be a wonderful investment for people. We all pretty much agree with that, I think. Now let's talk about how real estate could become a problematic asset for people that have owned it for longer periods of time. One of the topics we sometimes will discuss in our concepts or our intro webinars is how certain assets can become problematic for people as they get older. And of course, it's especially important to consider these potential issues and concerns when you're working with your seniors that own real estate, because now they're getting to the point where the asset itself could have some problems associated with it. So let's just run down this list here. The property taxes and insurance, obviously this is an ongoing expense pretty much associated with every property. That never goes away. The second point there, not income producing, obviously that would be your raw land. Asset rich and cash poor would be the slogan for that type of property. The third point there, owners of various types of rental property, even farms, maintaining the property can be a major issue or headache for them. The management of property, tenants issues go along with owning rental property. I would guess that probably a bunch of you folks that are listening today own some rental property yourself. I own some rental units, so I'm sure we're all aware of the issues associated there. We call it the 3 T's: the tenants, taxes, and toilets that people have to deal with. Obviously, time and stress can be too much for many, especially if that's an older property owner. They're getting to a point where they just don't want to manage property anymore. And then the last point there, because of we're in a litigious society now, you have to be concerned about the liability and risk that a tenant could cause problems that require legal representation or action. So those are issues, and I know there's insurance for that, but then we're right back to the time and the stress issues associated with the property. So these are just a few of the issues surrounding ownership. And I know for many property owners, there comes a time when the issues and the concerns begin to outweigh the joys and the benefits of ownership, and then they're going to consider selling. And then we're down to the last 3 points. Because now they got new issues. It has to be sold, so it's not a liquid asset, of course. Some people are frustrated by the selling process, paying the realtor, doing the negotiations, the closing costs, the hassles involved there. And then the biggest issue, which is the last one on the page here, is the capital gain issue. And for many people, they've owned real estate long enough that has some significant appreciation. And, that, as you know, when a property owner contemplates selling, the capital gains issues, the capital gain taxes can become the major deterrent from selling that property. I know there's a benefit, obviously, in passing that on to your heirs because of the step up in basis that's currently available. But a lot of them maybe aren't in a position that they would want to do that, or maybe the kids aren't interested. So the capital gains becomes the big issue in a lot of cases with delaying selling the property. So now you may have a solution that you can talk with them about. So what we're going to do is talk about those options that are available. Of course, we know what the traditional options are. They can keep the property. Obviously, they have to still, maintain, insured, all the other things that we just talked about. It maybe has inconsistent income. The property taxes go up, the liability exposure, some of the things that we just talked about. They can sell the property. Of course, that would be another option that's available to them. But again, we touched on those, the frustration of the sales process. Then you have the capital gain issue. You have buyer issues. They want whatever contingencies buyers want, realtor fees, closing costs. Right now the market is good, but it can be unstable at times, so we know how that works. 1031 exchange, that is a popular and pretty common and beneficial scenario for a lot of folks. We all know how that works, but it does have its own issues too. Especially if they're a senior, they might be at the end of wanting to own that property, and now the 1031 benefits have snowballed into an even larger capital gain because they've kept carrying it forward. And so if they've postponed the gain taxes via the 1031, now they got to deal with it. It all comes snowball into the final property when they sell that. They've got to deal with those capital gains. So that can be, and then you still have the other issues associated with that. You still got to sell the property. You got to buy new property in 6 months. The capital gain, and that's what I was talking about. The capital gain problem didn't go away. It just got deferred. And so, we do get to the end of that at some point. So bottom line here is you might have clients that simply want to exit from being an owner and would like an efficient way to do just that. And so that's what we're here to talk about today, and why someone would want to seriously consider the type of planning that we offer here at Legacy Tree Foundation, and that's transferring real estate to fund a legacy plan. So the benefits or the issues that we want to resolve here are, one, the capital gains. We want to reduce or eliminate some of that capital gain. So when someone does a legacy plan, a portion of the capital gain is completely erased. The portion that's not erased can be amortized over the term of the contract. So the portion that's not eliminated is paid out only as the client receives income payments from us. And so that even isn't as painful as it would be if they just sold the large chunk of property. We can also reduce and eliminate federal estate taxes, so all or a portion of the estate tax of their estate issues are completely removed when they do one of these transactions. And then thirdly, of course, there's an income tax deduction. And so they can reduce their reportable income based on the value of the tax deduction that this would create. And so sometimes a real estate transfer, a second point I'll make here, sometimes real estate transfers can create a significant tax deduction. A lot of times the deduction is so large that they can't use it all in the first year. They get to carry forward up to 5 more years. But even in those cases, if they can't use it, then there's some other advantage we can talk about with you regarding how they can apply that tax deduction to maybe access qualified money more efficiently also. That's kind of another conversation, but the key here is that doing this type of a transaction, they're able to reduce their capital gains and their income tax. Basically, they get a capital gain tax deduction and they get an income tax deduction in addition to reducing the taxable estate. Then the bottom part there is about the income. In addition to the tax benefits, of course, they're getting income. Income can be immediate, can be deferred, so they could set it up for life of 1 or 2 individuals or for a specified term of years. So it gives them some flexibility and control in how your client would like to receive the income. Now, as you can see on the right there, we reinsure, we call it reinsurance, but we insure the income obligation to your client with highly rated insurance carriers. This is important because it's important to you, it's important to us, it's most important to your client though, because rather than for us to set aside reserves and self-insure or invest that into something more volatile, we invest into insurance contracts. So we're basically insuring the future income. We're not just reserving funds, but we're insuring that future income. Second to the bottom there, there's the closing costs. It's kind of a nice part of the way we handle these transactions is that the client doesn't have to pay the closing costs out of pocket at the closing. We're able to absorb those costs into the contract by reflecting them back into the payout. And so that's a nice part, is that they can get a contract at the full sale price, less any encumbrances, of course. And that'll usually create a larger tax deduction. So the closing costs are something that doesn't come out of their pocket up front. And then the last part on this slide is that, and it's often overlooked, but it's so important, I think, is that LTF pretty much handles the whole transaction for you and for your client. Let me just give you a real quick example of a couple that we're familiar with from a few years ago. This couple did a very large real estate transaction. It was part of a farm. Their names were Howard and Charlotte. They were from Indiana, and they wanted to sell their farm and retire. And so the transaction was completed. They avoided the capital gains. They saved a lot of money from the income tax savings as well. And then with part of the money, they purchased a life insurance policy to replace the value of that asset to their children when they pass away, when Howard and Charlotte passed away. They got a Lexus. They moved to Florida. Well, since Nashville was on the way between Indiana and Florida, they came by our offices and wanted to say hi. And excuse me, the fun thing about that was that they stopped in. We were able to ask them some questions. Just a second here. Excuse me, a little cough. So we were able to ask them some questions. And one of the questions I thought was interesting is somebody asked them, "What did you like best about the transaction?" And to my surprise, it was that Howard said he liked best that he didn't have to do anything. The whole transaction was basically facilitated for him. I'm sure he liked the tax benefits and the income benefits and all those, but the point was he didn't have to really do anything other than agree with the work that we were doing for him. So that's kind of important. I think it's key to keep in mind that we can make a real estate transaction very easy for both you and for your client. Our real estate director, Nanette Beebe, has been doing these contracts, these types of cases for 16 years or so. Facilitated tens of millions of dollars worth of real estate closings. So this is something that we're very good at and very efficient at. So I think it's important that you know that, because even though you think some of this might look complicated, we're going to get involved and we're going to help you and we're going to help the client make the transaction happen in a seamless fashion. So the real key with these types of plans is you're doing tax planning, you're doing estate planning, you're doing income planning. And these are all the things that you do as a financial professional for your client. And real estate is just that type of asset that should fit into that mix when you're communicating with the clients. Now, just to clarify, I mentioned income for a set number of years or lifetime, so I wanted to make sure that we're able to summarize the types of programs that we're actually offering. Because currently we're just going to talk about 2 plans that we have available. And both of these are just what the title says. One's a term certain payout, one is a lifetime payout. So it's pretty much that simple. On the left is our charitable bargain installment sale. You can see the IRS codes there, and it's where people transfer the asset to us. We provide a contract that gives them the tax benefits, but then it gives them income for a specified number of years. On the right side, this is the charitable gift annuity. This pays income for the lives of one or two people. Charitable gift annuities have been around for a long time. 1843, I think, is, well, I know that's when they actually started. I did actually see an advertisement for a college in Illinois that's been offering CGA since 1897. So they're not a new concept, but they are an effective concept, especially when talking about real estate. So that's important to keep that in mind. So simply, one program provides term certain income, the other lifetime income. It's really that simple. The thing that makes these a little bit different, maybe comparable in your world, when you think of doing a SPIA is your single premium immediate annuities, single premium deferred annuities in your world, when you're just doing your annuity business, is you collect the check, you fill out the app, you send it to the insurance company. So these are going to work a lot like that. It's just that two things. One, these can be funded with assets other than cash. Obviously, we're talking about real estate, so they can fund these with real estate. It isn't about collecting a check, it's transferring the real estate to the charity. And then the other difference with just a regular annuity is that obviously these are providing tax benefits in addition to the income benefits available to that clientele. So one final point here is that these are not a trust, so don't get these confused with a trust. A trust can be a little more complicated, expensive, ongoing. They have to be managed and tax returns filed every year. These are just simply the client exchanges the asset with Legacy Tree Foundation for a contract that talks about the tax benefits and the income benefits. One guy coined the phrase a CRT light, charitable remainder trust light. So these are just simply, just like you're doing an annuity, you fill out the apps, fund it with whatever the asset is, and then we provide a contract in return that gives the benefits to the client. Now let's get into some details as to how this actually works. This is key. So if you're kind of multitasking there, this is the page that you might want to slip over and listen to, because this is how we do it, and this is why we're able to do this effectively. But again, let me just point out that we pretty much do all the work, and we keep you, your client, in the loop as much as both of you want to be in the loop in terms of doing these types of transactions. So first thing that happens, obviously, is where we gather information. We communicate with you, with the client, about the income and the tax benefits to determine if this is a suitable and beneficial transaction for your client. Your LTF in-house case design specialist here will help you gather the needed information. They're going to discuss the case design depending on your client's needs, and then we're going to run the illustrations for you. So assuming we've done all that and we're a go to move forward, the first step that's going to happen there is the client will agree to and sign our option agreement along with the application for the selected legacy plan. So it's basically just we do an option agreement and then we do the application. Now the option agreement gives Legacy Tree Foundation full authority over this property as the seller to market and sell the property. And we have that set up in that contract for 1 year. So keep in mind though that your client, he's the owner of the property, they're going to place a threshold value in that option agreement. In other words, we cannot sell that property for less than the value placed in the option agreement. So it will be the value that the seller agrees to. It's not going to be like they've signed an option agreement on a $500,000 property and we liquidate it for $250,000, to get a quick sale. We go by the price that they would like to get on that property. On the other side of that, they need to price it realistically though, because it doesn't do any good to sign an option agreement and then price it above market and then we never sell it. So we keep all those things in mind and we have those conversations with you. Thirdly then, once we receive the option agreement along with the other paperwork, we will begin the process of selling the property for the client. Now, unless there's already a potential buyer, our real estate department is going to, first of all, we're going to qualify a real estate agent who has the best qualifications and experience to then list the property. So we'll get it listed, and then all the offers will come to Legacy Tree Foundation because we're the seller for the client there. And then we're going to communicate with you and with your client as to what's happening with that sales process. So the real estate agent will be working for us, and that's something we'd like to be able to handle that aspect of it. They're working for us, not for your client at that point. We're working for your client to do the best in getting the most for the property. When an offer has been made that's acceptable to both the owner and to the Legacy Tree Foundation, we'll sign that offer as the seller. then. And that'll be the process. Now, two additional points I'm going to make here. One is if you're working with or considering a client who has property that already has a signed purchase agreement. In other words, they've already agreed on something, they've already signed the offer and received the purchase agreement. We're not able to be involved in that. You're already too far in the process. We can't jump in the middle of it. So just remember, if you're going to use Legacy Tree Foundation, it has to be before there's any kind of signed purchase agreement. We have to be the one signing the purchase agreement as the seller, not the owner of the property, in order for them to get the tax benefits. That's the key there. Secondly, Legacy Tree Foundation will select the realtor. It's almost always makes the transaction process much smoother if we select the realtor. When we select the realtor, they know that they're working for us. Now, if you have a realtor that you can refer, you can let us know, and we'll allow that person to compete with a couple of other realtors through a qualification process. And if it's a decent realtor, we're probably going to use them. The main thing we're looking for is, you have a client and they've got some property and they want to sell and they want to use their brother-in-law to sell it because he dabbles in the real estate business, but he doesn't know anything about the market or the details. And then he gets offers and he takes them to the client when we're really the ones that are supposed to be receiving it. So everything gets mixed up there, and there can be some conflict of interest issues involved that. So that's why we like to get the realtor. And we want the one that works best for the property that's being sold and for no other reason. Now, the fourth step, the IRS requires an appraisal on any asset in which there's a tax deduction of $5,000 or more. So this will probably produce a deduction of more than $5,000. It definitely will, because we don't work with really small properties. Like, we don't get down to like the $50,000 or below properties typically without prior conversations. But the point is, if there's a large tax deduction, an 8283 form has to be filed. Therefore, the client has to secure, and this is really the only thing that they need to pay for, is they need to get an appraisal of that property. There's some rules in there that need to be aware of, that it can't be done prior to 60 days of the closing. So that's key, that when they're going to sell it, they go out and get an appraisal. Then it's useless, because if it takes 90 days to sell it, you have to get another appraisal. So that's just something that we keep everybody aware of. And we're good and get involved with the timing and securing the appraisal and providing that 8283 form. So again, we're involved in that. Next step is then the closing. We've got everything done ahead of time. We're all ready to go. LTF will retain a local closing title or closing company or an attorney to handle the simultaneous closing. And this is really where it all comes together, because then the owner signs the property or the warranty deed over to us. So they sign a warranty deed transferring the property to LTF, and then we sign a warranty deed transferring the property over to the new buyer. It's just really that simple. Then the sixth point then is the proceeds from the sale then are sent to the Legacy Tree Foundation, because that was donated to us now at the closing. And then we're the seller, we're actually the owner that sells it. And so the funds will come to us, and then that's what we use to fund their legacy plan, the plan that they've selected. So that's a lot of details. I wanted to make sure that you saw the details on a page there. But it's real important, again, to keep in your mind here that we'll handle all the details and making sure the documentation is prepared properly and the closing is made conveniently for you and the property owner. You just basically throw us into the ring, and we sweep it all up for you, make it happen very quickly. All right, so that's that. That's the fun part. Now let's. I want to get to a couple of case studies for you, so you can see a couple of cases in process. I actually have 3 of them. I'll show you the first one, maybe a little bit more detail, and then they'll be kind of similar, so we'll speed up as we go through them here, because the basic layout is the same. It's just kind of the type of transaction we're looking at. In this case, it's replacing rental income for immediate term certain income is what we're looking for here. This is Rob and Irma Carter. Owned rental properties for years. They'd like to spend more time with their grandchildren, less time managing their properties. One of their properties provides yearly gross income of $9,000. It was purchased for $40,000, is now worth about $180,000, so they got some nice gain there. They like the idea of selling the property, but the large capital gain causes them to hesitate. So in that case, they've got $140,000 a gain. At 15%, that's $21,000 gain. So here's what they do. They transfer their $180,000 of real estate over to Legacy Tree Foundation. As we just discussed, there's a process we go through, but in the end, they exchange your real estate for their legacy plan contract. So what is that contract going to hold? First, they're going to get an income that's going to replace that rental income. In this case, the Carters are going to get $9,300 per year for 20 years. Now, a portion of this is taxable. It really leaves them with much more spending money than they had before. Here's the thing to think about. They were getting $9,000 a year. They had $2,200 of property taxes, $800 of insurance. That's not counting any other expenses. That leaves them with $6,000 right there of what they're left with. And again, plus if they have any expenses or upkeep or re-renting expenses, those kind of things. So it sits real well in terms of the income aspect. Now they create an income tax deduction of $65,486 that directly reduces the amount of taxable income that they need to report. So if they're at a 25% bracket, potentially this could put $16,372 right back into their pockets. Next, instead of paying that full $21,000 of taxes on that $140,000 of gain, over 36% or $50,934 of that gain, of that $140,000 gain, is completely and forever forgiven. That's just wiped out. That's a tax deduction for the gain. This could save them another $7,600 on that. Now the remaining 64% of capital gains that wasn't eliminated gets paid or amortized over the income payment, so it just comes in small chunks. So there's no large lump sum of capital gain taxes to pay. Also, one other tax point that's not listed on the slide is that a portion of the assets completely removed from their taxable estate. So if they got an estate tax issue, part of this is going to get removed from their taxable estate. Client has the flexibility of naming their children as beneficiaries of the income stream. So if they pass away before the income gets paid out, they can have it go to the children. Some people will actually have it go to another charity to receive part of that income stream as a beneficiary. And as mentioned, we facilitate the sales process. So that's basically how that happened. Once we have the legacy plan in place, because we're promising that income for over 20 years or for 20 years, we're going to reserve the value of that income stream. And our reserve method is to simply invest that into a contract with a highly rated and familiar insurance carrier. So we're going to insure that future income stream to make sure that's covered through an insurance plan. So from their $180,000, they're getting a little over $210,000 versus roughly $144,600 that they would have gotten. And the reason I say that is because I assumed if you take off 8% for the selling costs and 21, that's $14,000 plus $21,000 for the capital gains, they would have netted about $144,600 out of that. And in this case, they're going to end up with more than that. So the Carters were able to enjoy the income stream from the legacy plan transaction and now spend more time with the grandkids, which is what their goal was. Less time managing this property because they don't have it anymore, obviously. So that's a nice transaction for them. Next one. This is a transaction about converting raw land into income and then using a deferred legacy plan to receive the income. So this is Fred and Dorothy Jasper. They invested $100,000 in a piece of land with the hope that it'd grow in value. Value is now $400,000, so their hope came true. They have plenty of income, but they'd like to reduce their current tax bill. Liquidating it before the capital gain rates potentially increased caused some urgency, but they were not particularly excited about having to sell it themselves. So they're concerned about what will happen with capital gain rates, and they didn't really want to sell it themselves. So they had a $300,000 gain at a 15%. It's $45,000 in capital gains. Again, same scenario. They transfer the $400,000. Even though we've got expenses to sell the property and some issues on the front side, we still issue the $400,000, our transaction for the full $400,000, and that of course gives them a larger tax deduction. Works well for them. And then the realty costs, the fees for selling it, are built into that, and then we reflect that back into the payout rate, and so that's how we absorb that. Instead of having to pay out of pocket and get a less deduction on the front side. So benefits here. In this case, they were concerned about the capital gain, so I showed that first. Instead of paying that full $45,000 in taxes on the $300,000 of gain, they wiped out about 38% of the capital gain. $113,000 of that gain gets eliminated of that $300,000, completely wiped out as a tax deduction. This could save them $17,000 in taxes, and again, then the 62% that remains, then that gets amortized over the payout stream, so they don't have to pay any capital gains until they start getting income. Now the income in this scenario, or the income tax deduction first, it's $151,000 tax deduction, so they get a reduction in their income taxes. The amount that they would have, the amount of income they'd have to report gets reduced. This could put a nice chunk back in their pocket, potentially $37,000 if they're at a 25% bracket. Then on the income side, they deferred their income. So they chose to defer the income for 5 years and have it pay for 20. So when it starts paying, then they're going to get $26,000 a year of income paid out on this asset. And then as usual, they can name the heirs or charity to be beneficiaries of their income. So they can name whoever they want as beneficiaries. That's key. But I always put the charity on there because some like to see charities benefit from it too. And this can be a way that they can help charities after they pass. And then obviously we're going to facilitate it. And then of course we're going to reinsure it. So that's the same scenario there, that we're going to go out and purchase something that's going to pay $26,000 a year for that 20-year period for them. So it's insuring the full value of that. So from their $400,000, they get nearly $575,000 versus they would have gotten about $323 if you take their $400,000 and subtract 8% selling costs of $32,000 and then the $45,000 of capital gains. That'd get them down to about $323 versus the $500 plus that they would get from our program. And that's not even considering if they were to invest. I mean, heck, they saved all that money on the taxes, $17,000 on capital gain, $26,000 or $37,000 on the other. If they were to invest that, I mean, that's not even taking that into consideration. They could get extra growth on that. So that's a nice looking scenario. And then one more. This is funding using the asset to create income that will fund a asset replacement life insurance policy. So this is I like this case. This is the Rowlands. They purchased land for $100. Now it's worth $500. They'd like to liquidate. They don't need income now though. They don't like the idea of paying $60,000 in capital gain taxes on that gain. They're in good health. That's key. And here's the other thing that's key, and you have a lot of clients that fit into this, but their children were not interested in the property, may have disagreed how to handle it after mom and dad passed away. And that's pretty important because a lot of people, and you've got clients like this, that mom and dad have the homestead, but the kids don't even live in the area anymore. One of the gals that used to work here from Ohio, they had 7 kids. None of the kids live in the area where mom still lives. Of course, they visit, but obviously, point being that kids a lot of times don't live in the area where mom and dad are. Plus, at their age, the complication, the expense in this scenario, the Rowlands didn't like the selling process either and having to deal with that. So it works out the same. They transfer it over to the Legacy Tree Foundation. In this case, they got a CGA, which is a lifetime income program. So how did that work? First of all, they created an income tax deduction of 188 plus, 25% bracket, $47,000 back in their pocket. Instead of paying the $60,000 of gains, you can see we're getting redundant here, so we can speed them up a little bit. But instead of paying $60,000 of gains, they were able to eliminate 37% of the gain. Tax deduction 151 wiped out of the 400. Could save them $22,000 in taxes. The rest of it's amortized again. So we see how that works. So there's the income tax deduction. There's the capital gain tax deduction. And then they created income. In this case, they were able to get $27,600 a year for the rest of their lives. So as long as either of them are alive, it's going to pay $27,600 to both or one or the other. Also, this is completely out of their taxable estate, so they've removed a $500,000 asset out of their taxable estate. So if that's an issue, then they've resolved that as well with this particular asset. As always, we're going to reserve that income stream with a fixed annuity that's going to meet that obligation. So we're going to purchase some kind of an annuity program that's going to pay them $27,600 for as long as either of them are alive. In many cases, we'll have it go right to them from the insurance company. If we use like Principal or American National or somebody like that, then it's going to go right to that family. So when you look at this case just like this, you're thinking, well, that looks like a pretty decent case. And it is a great case because they were able to liquidate out of the real estate, reduce their income taxes, save on capital gain taxes, and create an income that they can't outlive. But there's even more. Imagine that. They didn't need income. So what did they do? They used a portion of that $27,600 of annual income, purchase an asset replacement life insurance policy. So they used the income from this, buy a life insurance policy. In this case, they were actually able to get $1 million policy. So if they got 2 kids, you can bet those kids are going to be on board with this, because instead of getting, whatever happens with the $500,000 property after the bickering and the arguing and selling it and the costs and everything, that have to deal with all that. In this case, they don't have to do anything. All they do is when mom and dad die, they each get $500,000. How happy are the kids going to be? It's a great transaction for you as well as the advisor, because you're going to get compensated on the legacy tree portion, the legacy plan portion, but then you're also going to get compensated on the whatever life insurance policy that you choose. So, if that's a good, suitable, beneficial scenario for them, it works out for everybody. There's a lot of wins in that scenario for people. But here's the thing, bottom line, folks, is you won't believe how easy we can make real estate transactions for you and for your client, because we're involved every step of the way. First, we help you with the case design and the presentation. Then when the time comes, we hire the realtor, list the property, receive the offer, set up the closing in the title company, and communicate with you and your client and get the price that your client wants. So talk about a nice way for you to increase your production and income without having to add new clients. This is it, because you're working with an existing client with one of their existing assets, and one that a lot of times is just simply left on the table. Usually it's not even discussed in the overall plan for the clients. It's kind of one of those things, well, I'll sell it and then I'll show you how we can invest. So this is where you can be involved on the front side and do more of an expansive plan for that client. Now, we talked about the cases here. Let's just wrap up with a couple of quick points here. Some of the housekeeping things, although I'd hardly call this part housekeeping. But I mentioned that we work with financial professionals, showing them how to do this type of planning in their practice. And so a lot of advisors we found have not had this type of planning in their practice. And one of the reasons they haven't is because they take a lot of time, but they don't get compensated. I mean, you can have your client donate money to this or that or do that, but then if you don't get paid, you don't spend a lot of time doing it. So we're set up to compensate you with a 7% referral fee. Could vary depending on the state or the type of program that you use, but it's just simply the referral fee that we've built into our model. Every charity does fundraisers, those kind of things, but we just have done it this way. It's more efficient for us to do it this way, to compensate you. You've done all the work, help them get the income, create the tax deductions, liquidate out of an asset, all those things, get money to charity that probably never would have gotten there. And so we think you should be compensated for that. The reserve method is something else that's key, because as mentioned, we're going to purchase an annuity that's going to match that income obligation to that client. And so it's, in essence, it's 100% reserved through a fixed annuity. So we've covered the base there. We don't have it invested in the market that could fluctuate based on a present value that we'd selected. We just match the obligation. We purchase an annuity. It's an expensive way for us to do it, but it gives peace of mind to everybody involved. Us, maybe last, you second, and first your client. And that's what we like to see. Thirdly, it's a nice benefit for you too, to be able to offer your client the ability that they can recommend other charities to benefit from the transaction. You talk about the case with them, go through the benefits, and they're like, well, how can you do this? And it's like, well, because it's a charitable plan. And they're thinking, well, hey, what do I get out of the charitable plan? I'd like to help my charity, my church, or my local homeless shelter, food bank, or something like that, or animal shelter, whatever the case may be. So they can make a recommendation and they can participate in that charitable component. Again, Legacy Tree Foundation is a 501c3 public charity. Been around since '99, so we've got about 18 years of existence. We have to do charitable works in order to be and to remain tax exempt. So we provide spiritual, physical, and humanitarian aid to those in need. I think the IRS designed the code to encourage charitable work, and charities, I think most of us would agree, can help charities more efficiently than the government. So we're a faith-based Christian charity. We provide, as it says there, spiritual, physical, and humanitarian aid to those in need. We have specific charities that we help, but we also have all the charities, hundreds and hundreds of charities that we've helped through the donor recommendations that have been a broad array of different areas of, in medicine and education and humanitarian things, feeding, disaster relief, prison, helping folks in prisons, those kind of things. So we're all over the board on that kind of stuff from different organizations that your clients have recommended. So let's do one final thing here in terms of the real estate. A couple of things to communicate with your clients, maybe to effectively probe, develop interest, or at least develop a conversation about how you can help them exit from real estate more efficiently. Let me just touch on these questions. And these are questions you can ask client. Are potential capital gain issues keeping you from selling your property? This is one of the most valuable and simplest questions, because many times it's the heart of the issue. It's really the only thing you might even need to ask them. The second question, did you know that there's a way to sell your property and drastically reduce reduce your capital gain tax. Of course, this could be the follow-up to the first question, but most of the clients are not aware of this type of planning. So you could be that unique advisor for your client, because a lot of advisors aren't aware of this type of planning either. So you could, again, have something unique to share with your client. Would you like to free yourself from tenant and maintenance challenges and still receive an income? Many seniors are in this position. They'd welcome someone helping them through this process if you could do that for them. Would you be interested in turning your land or farm into an income stream that you could never outlive, or leave an income for your children? This is simply part of the listening and processing process, of course, that you're going to do working with your client. Are you interested in learning how to transfer your real estate to fund a tax-free life insurance benefit for your heirs? Again, people are looking and in need of an efficient way to exit from real estate, reduce the estate tax issues, provide for their kids. So this can be that excellent way to develop that conversation by using questions like these with your client. And then actually, obviously, having a solution when you ask these questions. So this is just a summary again of those type of assets. So you need to be sure and jot down the names of your current clients that own some of these types of real estate, and then talk to one of our in-house development advisors, or talk to Nanette in here directly about how we might be able to help you with one of those clients. Let me just say a couple things in closing. Obviously, we know this type of planning is unique for you, but it is something that needs to be in your arsenal of available tools. This is one of the simple strategies where you have the ability to significantly increase your production without having to add new clients. And I think we've discussed that why, but the real why is because real estate is that asset, as I've mentioned, that a lot of advisors leave behind. You know, the question or the answer they have is, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Client, when you sell that, let me know and I'll help you invest the remainder of what you have left. Well, that's after paying the selling costs, the realtor fees, the capital gain taxes, all that. If you can help them get it sold and reduce those capital gain taxes, you could be the unique advisor to them that I mentioned. And if it's your current client, you didn't even have to prospect for them because you're already working with that client. So point being is we'll look forward to communicating with you regarding which of your clients might be well served by this type of discussion, and we'll help you walk through the process with all the tools that you'll need, the talking points that you'll need, and everything you'll need to have those conversations with the client about these types of assets. So thanks everybody for joining us. We'll look forward to speaking with you soon. God bless. Goodbye for now.